Can you speak a little bit more on what you just said about you start at 8 and then you're asked to reel back? I just think that's so interesting. I love that.
I think it was actually my high school drama teacher that first said this to me, to always like show up to the room prepared, like show up to the room warm. And it's like, it's part of the job. Do you know what I mean? To show up and it's like, this is everything that I've created at home by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And let's have a conversation as both with everyone who's creating this story or telling the story,
Mm-hmm.
about how we want to reshape what I've created, so that we can bring everybody's pieces and clay them together. And then that's where the real fun begins. Do you know what I mean? And you don't want to waste nobody's time, because especially in film and theater, like we're always running behind schedule because we always wish that there's more time. So I think that's where that comes from for me. It's like, we're here and time is precious and we're in the room. So everyone come into the room ready.
Also building off of what Aileen said, from like the nitty gritty, like annoying parts of our job for auditioning, the worst thing that you can do as an actor is to come in unprepared and then underwhelm. Like it feels awful because when you get your side the night before and you don't take the time to prep, and then you walk in the room and then you do a kind of job, and then you think about it, and it sucks. And I'm sure it sucks being on the creative team on the other side too, like what Aileen said about like go like balls blazing at an 8, when they want a 5 is better to bring that energy and to like show who you are or who this character, your interpretation of this character is, versus you doing like almost a table read of the side that they gave you, and they say, okay, thank you for your time, I guess. It as actors who are we're pre-professional in their training and now professional, like going out to work and book roles now, there's a pressure that we put on ourselves to please, and constantly in our training we had to remind ourselves, like, you're not here to please anyone, you're here to do the work, and if the preparation that you did takes you to the 8, when you go into the audition room and they ask you to dial it back down to a 5, you at least made an impression and have something to show for what your preparation was. No, you can't like fish out a performance, because no one has time for that in this world, especially now.
In the same vein, when you're in the thick of a scene and you're with your scene partner, a lot of people refer to it as kind of a game of catch. You have to give, you have to take, and you find a rhythm. Now, I want to ask, what if you're just not finding that rhythm with that person? How do you re-engage with them? How do you, re-spark the scene? How do you go about that and navigate it?
I personally, through past experiences, I've had the most fun when my scene partner has done zero work. Because I have to work so much harder. And when you have to work so much harder, I feel like that's when the real fun begins, because the actor inside is just like screaming, like, why have you? I've had, second year, I've had a scene partner for scene study class, and we worked on the scene for, I think, 4 weeks, and she just never read the play. And it was really obvious. And she never memorized the lines until the very last showing. And that process, I think, taught me the most. That was the scene partner that taught me the most out of all my scene partners that I've worked with throughout my 3 years of college. Because you don't want to drop the ball, right? And when your scene partner, like, I don't know what it would be in the analogy, it's just like, on the ground. The ball is on the ground and they're not doing anything. It's a repeated motion of like getting it back up from the ground and rethrowing it in different ways. And you're like, how do I get you to catch this ball, right? When you don't know anything about the script. And then I think at that point I found a sense of freedom. Like, okay, I can't depend on anyone anymore. It's just myself, myself and I trying to make this scene work. And then it's like the pressure is taken off, you know? And then I was like, oh, this unlocked something, because I realized the work is just, you're responsible for it, for your own work. And then that's kind of it. And then you wish for the best, you know?
Yeah. And you said unlocked it. What are the things that, you know, unlock a portion of yourself that you didn't even know was there? You know, has there been a time where a role absolutely petrified you and then you were like, oh no, that means I need to do it. That's gonna like unlock another gear that I didn't even know I had?
In that, I would say go back to the work, like do more prep. You know, there's no amount of work that's too much work for a role, unless, you know, if you're, you know, playing someone who's not that great and decide to commit crimes for your role. That's not what anyone is saying. But like, if you're scared to do the role, but you chose to do it and you're excited but nervous about it, like do more work. That's something that I feel like in our training, they don't really tell you, at least like on a pre-professional kind of track. They, and in like a conservatory, they would just say, go deeper. But what does go deeper really mean? It means do more work, you know, do more research, like exercise your muscle a little more, whether it be your empathetic muscle, whether it be the one for imagination, like go deeper into the prep that will bring you, you know, more confidence and comfort in the role that you're challenging yourself with.
And also to do more well, I'm going to always continue to bring it back into the real world because I do think it's so linked. It's like also do more work on yourself too. Like we chose this profession not only to develop the character, but to develop ourselves as individuals. And so if you're coming up with that fear, like take that on as like, okay, I need to look at like why I am having this sense of like imposter syndrome, as you put it. Like that can be embedded and is not different from you researching the character, because it's a research on yourself to be able to do the character. Yeah. So that's what I said. It's like, yeah, do more work on the character, but I always love the opportunity to grow as an individual too. And as I grow, my character grows. As I grow, my ability to play a character and to challenge and to deepen a character grows as well.
I agree. I feel like so much of your growth comes from fighting imposter syndrome, especially just because I just finished my second year and so much of my own experience was working with people much older than me, some in this group who I just so greatly admired. And every time I saw them, I was like, oh my gosh, this is where my bar is. And if I want to achieve that, my bar needs to be higher, and you have to be in charge of setting your own bar. So I feel like everything in life, especially as an artist, when these things come to you, you have to be like, this was sent to me by something. My spirit is taking me this place, so I need to meet my spirit there.
And that extends to after you graduate from your conservatory also. It's how you no longer have these, you know, rules and tasks and homework to do to like keep you on top of that discipline. And when I say discipline, I mean it in a sense of like your own self-accountability of like, how much do you still love it? Like, are you willing to continue to explore and grow and implement these things into your these practices into your real life, to grow as a person? And that inherently like translates to your craft.
Yeah, I love what Sọma said, because you know, after your conservatory is done, you know, you may go out and find that your technique that you learned does not work for you anymore. It no longer serves you, or it no longer serves whatever project you're a part of. So I do want to ask about throwing the playbook out the window. When do you decide all that heady stuff, all that prep, it's not working because, I don't know, suddenly the directors decided to block the scene differently, or, you know, an actor said a line in a way that I wasn't I wasn't expecting, that happens all the time where you have to like get rid of it because it's not going to help you. How do you just on the moment turn those gears?
It really reminds me of like what Kristina said earlier in this roundtable conversation of just like giving yourself over to the spirit, but also placing trust in yourself and your support system to be able to sustain it. Once you give yourself over to that and you are suddenly that role, the playbook kind of sits back on the shelf. You don't need to take it out and read it all the time. It allows the actor to have a spur of the moment, a spontaneous reaction to a delivery of a line that wasn't in rehearsal. It allows for, like, at least in screen acting, and for acting for film and TV, just to be coming in with a preparation, be able to act off the cuff,
right.
And having that like trust and that confidence in yourself, and also like the spirituality of the practice, that helps immensely.
My acting training, like all my teachers, my professors always referred to the training they gave us as filling our toolbox. That each thing that they're teaching us is a tool. And, I take that really seriously, because tools can be used and then they can't be used, or there are different tools for different things. And just because you put a tool down won't mean that it won't be there when you're ready to pick it up again. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not one of those people that are honestly married to my training in that way, because I know that the main point, like the goal, is always to be able to absorb the character into my being. And so sometimes the training that I got allows me to do that, and other times it doesn't. And sometimes intuitively I'm able to reach that place, or I'll get ideas on how to like practice a thing, say it this way, put it in my body this way. And so like I'm never married to the toolbox. It's just a toolbox, and that's what I'm going to use it for. And then anything else, life experience, what books I read, what I learn after training, all of those things, it just builds it up from that point on. Yeah.
So filling your toolbox, I love that expression. And you said books and mentioned different things. I want to ask about music. What is your relationship? And when I say you, I mean everybody can jump in and answer this. What is your relationship to music? How does that take you in and out of worlds and in and out of characters? Do you build playlists sometimes for your character? Let me know.
Yeah, I love music. I always tell people that in another world, like in another reality, I was a musician, like forget acting. For me, again, music speaks at a very subtle level and a very subconscious level, so it can be an amazing tool. I mean, what other thing can you just like press a button on your phone, hear it, and then suddenly your whole emotional body just totally is in a different dimension, Mm-hmm. So in that way, it's really helpful. And I think it's really important to actually pull from different artistic mediums in that way. Like I'm a very visual person, so I'm someone who like make a Pinterest board, with pictures, or like vision board, the character, but anything that allows the character to be absorbed into like my subconscious mind, where I don't have to be thinking about it so hard, but it lives in a place where it's being felt.
Yeah, I love that, pulling from different places. And Pinterest is a great place for fashion too. I get a lot of inspiration in terms of fashion. So in that same note, costume, how important is costume to your character, and how important is the relationship between your costume designer and yourself?
I think costume is so important, because it's touching your skin. Do you know what I mean? And we're very sensory beings as actors, and how one piece of article of clothing can change your physicality, and how your body feels in relation to that piece of fabric, and the texture and the weight, and where it's tight and where it highlights. And after you like spend a few minutes looking in the mirror and kind of get an idea of what the audience will be seeing, and it's like it kind of ties the whole thing together. And it's such a blessing when I'm able to cultivate a really healthy relationship with my costume designer, because then you get to like throw in your little input. And it's really important because they're making sure that you're physically comfortable and that your physical body can do what it needs to do on stage. Like, oh man, if you have to do like a 2-hour show in high heels, you have to keep that line of communication open with your costume designer. And a lot of times you have to say like, hey, this is really not working, and this one shoe is compromising my ability to tap into that moment, because all I can focus on is how really uncomfortable that is, and I can't get there. So I think with like costume and set and props are such juicy little elements of the theater that the actor needs to make sure to be very familiar with in order to have a very whole experience to tell a story.
Personally, for me, costuming plays everything. Costuming, and then also like music, like tangible, but also kind of heady things, like meeting each other in the same way. Because I feel like clothing is just so much of how people express themselves. Like you can see the way someone dresses and instantly know so much about them. And neither like a good or bad way. It's just like we, as creators, we're essentially always just showing. And I think that also works within clothing as well. And I know when I finally got to back in my high school program, we didn't really have the funding to do stuff like that. It was mostly like running to thrift stores and like asking people to switch clothing and stuff. But when I got to NYU and we started doing like actual productions, it changed so much for me. I didn't even know it would mean that much to me to begin with. But again, like textures and like tangible things, the way that things feel on your skin, I feel like it changes everything. You're truly presenting something different. And then when you get to work with a costume designer that's going to meet you there in the middle, and you're like both kind of like showing each other like what you want to portray and what you want to show, it's like a really beautiful experience.
Yeah, I feel like as a non-binary person, it's really important to have people who like are on the creative team, especially the costume designer, who can like empathize or has dealt with gender dysphoria or understands like your personal idea of fashion, and has done the work to like really deconstruct their binary ideas about what characters are supposed to look like. And I like the first time I ever was able to like wear a binder that fit me was in the Ramayana. And like I just didn't have the money to like go somewhere and tell them, like I had really, like a large chest. So it was hard to find a cheap binder that I could wear and that would work. And so that was literally like just the most emotional, personal possible costuming experience, where like this queer team was just like, so how masked are you going to be? Because we know you're the princess, but like, hello, it's you. And it was just to be seen in that way was like one of the most special things I've ever experienced, like, period. So
I remember that. Those conversations were happening at the table, and I was so honored to be at that table. With Mika, they're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. Just seeing those decisions happen, and I was like, wow, like I just felt blessed. I was like, we're moving forward here in a way that I just haven't seen before. So shout out to Mika, you're awesome.
And shout out to you. I literally cannot thank you enough for the space that you and Mika created together. Like it was equal parts you and Mika. Just have to put that out.
Thank you. In the same way, fashion is very related to beauty. I want to ask, and beauty will always be in our work. I don't think there's a way for us to move away from beauty, but I do think there's an opportunity for us to re-engage with beauty. How are you all re-engaging with beauty in your work?
So I want to tie this back into the last question. My introduction to theater was with a program that had no means and access to resources. So I actually never felt like, at least for me, that costume was valuable for me to understand my character. And now I feel like I am enough. So when I feel like it's actually easier for me to find the world without something telling me what the world is, because then my imagination could do more work. And I tie this into beauty because even when I collaborated with you for Born, a lot of people DM me like, are you a dancer? And I have to tell them like, no, I'm not a dancer, because I don't want to disrespect dancers, but I do use the term movement-based performance artists. And for me, when I move, there is, I always bring up this essay by Malik Gaines, The Quadruple Consciousness of Nina Simone. Yeah. Nina Simone is just eloquent and graceful, but when I look at the body in itself, like I'm really aware that I may be a nude artist and like give me a couple of years, but I'm very aware that the body itself tells a specific story. Whether you're a woman, whether you are a black woman, when I see my body in a photo, on the stage, on a screen, I feel like there is this time warp happening where someone sees my body and knows my past. They're with my body in the present, but whatever relationship to my body they're having, they're going to move into the future. So as far as beauty, it's been a long time for me to consider myself beautiful. And I hope I'm not going on a tangent, but there is this awareness that I have that I'm just like, okay, let me make this beautiful. And I get that note a lot in my training. Christina, you're too graceful. Right? I always get that critique, but it's like, okay, all right, but how do I understand that I can also be gritty and nasty, and that also be a level of beauty? Because there's beauty in everything. There's beauty in pain, in happiness, and trauma. There's a beauty to it. You know?
I love that.
I think your question sort of poses like in our industry currently, or historically, there's always been a conventional sense of beauty, of like aesthetic, like clear skin, like, you know, and in America, like white and blonde. Sorry, it just was what it was for however long it is. And what we're doing as artists, at least our generation, is recontextualizing what beauty is to be, what Christina said, to be raw, unfiltered emotion and expression, to like make that the commerce of what beauty is in artistry, as opposed to like being the single tier queen on the camera. You know what I mean?
I also think like it's super important to point out the ways that we question these beauty standards. Like sometimes I feel like to give some contrasting examples, like I don't know if anyone has seen Napoli Ever After, but I personally thought it was terrible because the whole thing was like this woman being like, blonde and straight and white is beautiful, and I have to like stop feeling that that's true even though it is true. And so, but then you look at movies like Queen and Slim or the movie Rafiki, where it's like there is no question. And it's just like, I think there's something like very liberating, at least for me, when I just see an artist or a creator just redefining the whole entire thing and turning it upside down and saying like, because we are not going to contrast ourselves, or we're not going to compromise ourselves, rather, it's fact and I believe it, and it really revolutionizes my own ability to see myself.
And that's also like the great thing about like devised and experimental work that's being done in theater, and now like more slowly in smaller forms of like film production, that you get to have those conversations and like have a reckoning with what beauty is in this sense, and like that comes from the perspectives of everyone in the room, and that's like the world that you operate in, not whatever this industry is saying to you, you know, which will change because the people who are working in these rooms eventually go out there and just like shake it up for everyone out there. But that, I think it's so important, if as an actor, to do at least one devised piece or one experimental work, because you learn so much and you're suddenly exposed to so many different things. And it's such a broadening of horizons that like really makes you think about going against convention.
Yeah. I think media has always been, since media has been created, it's played such a prominent role in defining for our society what beauty looks like. And I really hate the idea that beauty is directly linked to visual. Like it's something that we see and that we recognize, and then we process in our brain and say, oh yes, that's deemed as beautiful. And we have to be very careful as artists because words, by this point, words are no longer words. Words are always the word themselves, the letters that's in it, and all the history of that word being used. And all the things that we've deemed beautiful comes with the word beautiful. So I feel a very strong responsibility now that I'm an up-and-coming artist. How am I going to reshape that? Because how we portray beauty in media will manifest very realistically in the world. And that's so scary. Like we have such a huge responsibility in shaping what the next generation sees. We're educating them without even realizing. I wonder if like Hollywood realizes how much educating they've done on our generation. And I really want to, one of my biggest aims is to start deconstructing. And I think, I forget who just touched upon this, but beauty should be truth. And it shouldn't be visual, because that's so limiting. And it's so, it does what beauty should be so little justice, you know? And it should be like a very intense, visceral feeling rather than, oh man, that girl's really pretty on the screen.
Yeah.
And she's next to a really beautiful looking guy, and they look like a match. And there's like water and trees. And no, like, what about, I always think about, have you guys seen The Farewell that just came out last year? The sister of the grandma, with like the really cool diamond hat and her dog, that's actually the director's aunt. She's not a real actor. And like that to me is beautiful, because that is truth. Do you know what I mean? I've never seen an American produced or Hollywood movie that portrayed Chinese culture to such truth. And like talking about it give me shivers. And when I get the shivers talking about it, that's how I know, okay, if that's what I think is beautiful, then I think I'm on an okay route when I keep creating things that's what I want people to feel. And I'm dedicated to be in the next wave of reconstructing what we deem as beautiful.
So brilliant. Like just listening to all of y'all, I love it. This is my last question. What would you tell your beginner self, like the self that says, yeah, I want to be an actor, that's what I want to do?
I think for so many people, there's an idea that the people that get to indulge in creativity, the people who get to indulge in passion, are the people who carry power and the means to do so. And so before I even considered going into training and becoming like this artist that I've known since like literally a small child, like watching stuff and being like, wow, this is amazing. This is beautiful. Like the art of creation was something that I've always like wanted to run towards. But again, like for so many of us, our reality is that it seems so unachievable. It seems like there's so many blockades and there's so many things that you have to get over. And what I would tell myself, and it's something that I'm still learning now, like I'm 20 years old, still just trying to figure it out, is that you have to run. And before you start like thinking about it, just like run towards it with everything that you have in you, and stop thinking about like, what if this, like when you get there, you'll get there. And you have to get there by running, not walking.
I think for people who come into contact with like art as a medium without like having the training before going into this pre-professional training that you do in your conservatories and your studios, you generally, and this is like a wide generalization, you have this very conventional path that you've set for yourself. You have your 5-step ladder. Like if it's theater, I'm going to do musical theater and I'm going to be on blah, 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 you know, and then you open up when you come into contact with all of these people with different ideas, and you learn, and your curiosity is piqued. And don't feel that this conventional, you know, path that you had dream that you had for yourself when you were young is what you need to stick to. Like you'll learn that art, beauty, and then like, oh, I hate to use the word fame, and like, you know, and the monetary aspect that comes with doing the work on a much larger scale, that doesn't matter. What matters is like what you find to be like your truth, and what, you know, enriches and creatively engages you and fulfills you. It's not like Broadway is not the goal for everyone. You know, being a Hollywood superstar is not the goal for everyone. Creating like meaningful art that's impactful should be the goal as an actor, to continue to be empathetic and to be interested and feel, you know, the love that you feel for these emotions that you're trying to grasp in a character. Like everything else falls into place and it works out in the end. Like, but you need to reprioritize like why you fell in love with it in the first place.
I think I would tell myself 2 different things. Like I would introduce myself to the concepts of relativity and just relativism in general, and also primitivism. So I think really just like understanding the whole concept of like everything is relative. Everything. You could be dropped somewhere else in the whole world. It's the same country, but it's a different world. And then primitivism in the fact that like Marisa, you were talking about like the feeling of being in your head. And like, I remember that so vividly, because you show up to acting school and they're like, get out of your head, get out of your head. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you don't even know, like, at least for me, I just like had no clue. I was like, I only understand acting as this, like, what do I want? How am I going to get it? And how am I going to show that I want it type of thing. So I feel like understanding that like the value of simplicity and the value of like childhood and the primitive feelings and wants and desires that we have from birth, that we are literally born with as people, are like the most important tools that are already within us.
It's on me, but I have nothing to say. Simply because the way I see it, like acting and creation, like creating and being an artist, is just such a journey. Like, who would have guessed? Like at every turn still, I'm just like shocked and growing. And at a certain level, I've come to accept that. Like younger me probably should have, could have, needed a lot of information, but it's like I've learned those things now. Like here I am having this amazing conversation with all of you, and all of these things have been discovered in time. And so I guess if anything, it's like just trusting in that timing, trusting in that when you ask questions, the answer will come, that because we are people and artists that are constantly evolving, that also the questioning never stops and the answers are never quite there. We're always kind of guessing, always kind of figuring it out, always right on the edge, and just getting to a place of where you can accept that and also learn to enjoy the ride of like being an actor on the stage or on the screen, and also just in your own life, right? Like we are all playing a certain role and we're all changing slightly every day, putting on a different costume every day, working with a new cast every day. And so much of what, you know, I've learned in training in life, it just all comes back to real life and into the world that we live in. And yeah.
I would tell my younger self two things when I was first starting out. I would tell myself to be patient with myself, because I feel like I was definitely very, very hot-headed when I first started. And I was like, need to be the best now, like right now. Need to be the best every single moment that I'm doing this, whatever acting looks like, must be perfect. And I can't believe, like, I look back now, I'm like, Aileen, chill out. Like you're 14. What is the rush? You know? But at the same time, like Sọma said, I'm kind of glad that I had that fire in me, because it definitely got me to where I am now. And I like going back to my younger self and asking her to borrow a little bit of that feistiness when I'm feeling like, oh no, I've got it under control, and to really push myself a little bit. And the second thing I would tell myself is to like start reading, because I did not start reading until I was always very, very afraid of dealing with text on paper, because being an immigrant, like I'm not very good at Chinese and I'm not very good in English, and I felt like I owned none of those things. And as an actor, you deal so much with language. You're the vessel in which past writers and past texts live through and then comes out into the modern world, you know? And language is such a beautiful thing that I've been running away from because it's so scary. I'm like, oh no, I feel stupid when I read because I read too slow. I don't understand this. Everybody understands it, but I don't understand it. There's some deficiency about me. So I really wish when I was younger that I told myself, like, there's nothing deficient about you. You can just take your time and start reading. Like, who cares if it takes 4 years to read a novel? Just read it and have fun. It's no pressure, you know? Start to love it, because this is going to be your work for the rest of your life. But, you know, I'm catching up now, slowly but surely. Reading is hard, y'all.
Yes.
I wish I could. I still feel like I'm talking to my younger self. I feel like I am my younger self now in quarantine in the house with my mom. You know, like I feel like I don't even know what an actor is right now. So, but I do know that I would tell my younger self, most importantly, that she probably didn't need an institution. You know, I think even though I'm very grateful for my training, I cannot take away how much I am grateful for, but I think that I brainwashed myself into believing that it was a necessity, and that it would make me who I am. And now I find myself in conversations as a graduate, and people automatically take me seriously when I mention like NYU, and I have to really make them understand that you can meet an actor from NYU and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a great actor. So please do not attribute like my talent and my work ethic to NYU, like attribute it to the fact that like I'm Kristina. Because I think that there's a lot of erasure that happens, you know, but I don't know, I'm still talking to my younger self. And I would tell my younger self that she was enough, that she did not need to become something else for her to be accepted in a room. And I would explain to my younger self that it's okay if people misunderstand you as long as they understand your work. And that I would tell my younger self too, that every room you step into, commit 100%, because if anything, that's what people remember, how much you commit yourself to something.
Well, you all answered my last question beautifully. And I'm just so honored and happy to sit down. You know, anytime I get a window into someone's process, I feel very, very honored that, you know, they trusted me to speak so freely and to be vulnerable. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much for always cultivating like literally the safest possible, most beautiful, truthful spaces ever to exist.
Ever.
Literally.